more responsibility you take on, the more meaning your life has. And the higher degree of responsibility that you agree voluntarily to try to bear, the richer your life will be. And no one's ever told that, and it's the case. You know, it's like you have 4 kids, say. Well, that's plenty of responsibility. You're going to have meaning. It's going to be rough, you know, because it's complicated. You have a complicated job and you try to help the careers of the people around you. You try to solve tough problems and aid suffering and do all of that. It's like, it's weight, it's responsibility, but there's glory in it. There's real glory in it. There's deep meaning in it. And young people are starving for that because no one ever tells them that. It's like, you're way more than you think, man. Stand up, do something difficult. Do something difficult and heroic, right? Burst out of your bonds. It's like, that's a good message. It's a necessary message, because we have to be more than we are, because if we aren't, we're not going to survive. Fear tends to paralyze people and stop them from moving forward. And there's lots of things to be afraid of, because you can be hurt and undermined and terrible things can happen to you. And so struggling with that fear in association with vulnerability is a problem that everyone has. And one of the tools that everyone has at their disposal is, well, to have a goal, because that makes a big difference. It means that confronting something terrifying is worthwhile because of what it might produce. But anger as well and aggression also remove fear. They help you overcome it. And so that if you can integrate that into your life, then that becomes determination and implacability and unstoppability and all those things which are you don't get without having that aggression integrated. Like in my kids' school, there was a rule, this is a bad rule in Canada, is that not only could you not throw a snowball, you couldn't even pick one up, which was a rule I told the children that they were welcome to break. I said, if you want to pick up a snowball and if you can hit a teacher in the back of the head with it, and that'd be just fine with me, but you have to take the punishment if you're willing to do it. But I thought that was just ridiculous beyond belief. You know, the idea that enforced weakness was something equivalent to peaceable coexistence. It's something that people don't understand very well, because they always feel that rules constrain them and interfere with their freedom. But if the rules are associated with the discipline, then they point you in a direction, and then you have a direction. And like life can be a very dreadful experience without direction. Like, one of the things that I think is true for people is that you need someone in your life that is associated with that light at the end of the tunnel. It's very, very difficult to find it yourself. It's very difficult to find it if no one around you can see it. But if you're fortunate, you'll see that somewhere in someone, or parts of it in different people, and then you can put it together. Sophisticated people understand that you don't make men harmless by making them weak. You make them useful and responsible by helping them bring their capacity for mayhem and aggression under long-term, conscious, careful control. And that's part of the respect. You know, I mean, one of the things about boxing, and this is true of any sport, I would say, is that you have to learn to take a blow, and you have to learn to control your temper. And that's a big deal, because a lot of aggression, violent aggression goes astray when it's impulsive. And all the men that I've met who were worthy people had a tremendous capacity for aggression, but it was contained and controlled. And so then they could use it carefully and voluntarily when it needed to be used. And it gave them a certain amount of, I would say, dignity, but it also was part of what made other people around them respect them very, very rapidly. You know, and I've seen this at every level of the hierarchy of different occupations, even very sophisticated occupations. And so to integrate that aggression is much, much, much better strategy than to try to repress it out of existence. Most people who trust are naive. And naive is not a virtue. It's a fault. It's partly a fault because if you're naive and you run into someone who's malevolent, including you, they might do you incalculable damage so that you will never recover. So that's not a good thing. You don't want to be naive. If you're not naive, that means you've been burned once or twice or 3 or 4 times. And once you've been burned in that manner, well, then it's hard to trust, because you think, well, why would I trust you, or me for that matter, knowing full well that I can be betrayed? And so then you're cynical, and you think that's an improvement over being naive. You're more mature, cynical than you are naive, even if it's premature, and it's often premature in young people. It's like, okay, so how do you get out of that conundrum? Well, this is a crucial thing to know. You trust people because you're courageous. That's why. It's the same reason that you're grateful. It's a mark of courage. It's a mark of commitment. It's like you and I, we're going to make an agreement, and you're full of snakes, and so am I. And there's lots of ways this can go sideways. But we're going to put together an agreement. We're going to articulate it out. We're going to try to find something that is of mutual benefit to both of us. We're going to put our hands out and shake, and we're going to try to stick to that. And we're going to risk trusting each other, right? It's a risk. And that's the risk upon which the state is based. Really, like I believe, and I think the evidence for this is very strong, by the way. I don't think that there is any other natural resource than trust. And for trust, you need courage, not naivety. And you've got to overcome your cynicism so that you trust. Capacity for speech is divine. It's the thing that generates order from chaos. Don't underestimate the power of truth. There's nothing more powerful. Now, in order to speak what you might regard as the truth, you have to let go of the outcome. You have to think, all right, I'm going to say what I think. Stupid as I am, biased as I am, ignorant as I am, I'm going to state what I think as clearly as I can, and I'm going to live with the consequences no matter what they are. That's an element of faith. The idea is that nothing brings a better world into being than the stated truth. Now, you might have to pay a price for that, but that's fine. You're going to pay a price for every bloody thing you do and everything you don't do. You don't get to choose to not pay a price. You get to choose which poison you're going to take. That's it. So if you're going to stand up for something, stand up for your truth. It'll shape you, because people will respond and object and tell you why you're a fool and a biased moron and why you're ignorant. And then if you listen to them, you'll be just that much less like that the next time you say something. And if you do that for 5 years, you'll be so damn tough and articulate and able to communicate and withstand pressure that you won't even recognize yourself. And then you'll be a force to contend with. It is not safe to speak, and it never will be. But the thing you got to keep in mind is that it's even less safe not to speak, right? It's a balance of risks. It's like you want to pay the price for being who you are and stating your mode of being in the world, or do you want to pay the price for being a bloody serf, one that's enslaved him or herself? Well, that's a major price, man. That thing unfolds over decades, and you'll just be a miserable worm at the end of about 20 years of that, right? No self-respect, no power, no ability to voice your opinions, nothing left but resentment because everyone's against you, because of course you've never stood up for yourself. It's like, say what you think carefully, pay attention to your words. The price is, it's a price you want to pay if you are willing to believe that truth is the cornerstone of society. And in the most real sense, if you're willing to take that leap, then tell the truth and see what happens. And nothing better could possibly happen to you. There'll be ups and downs, and there'll be pushback, and there'll be controversy and all of that, but it doesn't matter. It's like, wake up, tell the truth, or at least don't lie, and that's a start. If you're reasonably articulate, like, start talking and sharpen yourself up. Be afraid, but be afraid of the right thing, and the right thing you should be afraid of is not saying what you say, because that's the same as not being. And here you are, suffering away. You might as well be at the same time. At least then there's something to you.
Like, well, what's life? Well, you have a job or a career, and hopefully you're productive and you contribute something to the community, and you provide yourself and your family with the necessities of life. That's a quarter of your life, or a third of it, something like that. You have an intimate relationship, you have a family. That's life. And if you don't have one of those, that's 1/3 of your life you don't have. Now, some people, maybe they're doing so well on the other two fronts that they can cope with not having that. Or maybe they're doing so well on one front, they can cope with not having two of them.
Compensates.
Yeah, maybe. It's pretty hard, because if you want to have a great career, it's hard to do that if you're alone and without a family, right? I mean, the people that I've seen who've been best situated in their life, all things considered, even in relationship to their career, have a pretty solid monogamous relationship that stabilizes them. And then they have a family that also stabilizes them and broadens out their life. On average, what everyone does on average is the thing to do. And so you just look, you see, well, what do people do? Well, they have a job or a career, they have an intimate relationship, and they have a family. And if you don't have any one of those things, well, then you're treading water harder. Doesn't mean you can't do it. And it doesn't even mean possibly that you shouldn't try, but as a default presumption, it's just utterly foolish. What else are you going to do with your life?
Life has meaning with responsibility.